Hi guys, welcome to Coffee Hang. Happy Saturday. I have a little bit of a new setup today. I'm going to try not to touch the mic stand. I can hear my husband in my head. It's better for you all if I do not touch the mic stand. So, trying to work with the lighting in here. It's a studio, so like you've got track lighting. It's kind of moody, so I brought in a portable light. We're still playing around, but we've got a new mic we're playing with. Last week we had a mic on the floor. This week we're trying to mic in my face. I also use my hands a lot. I saw in the last one, so I was like, how can we break that up? So maybe the mic helps. I don't know, but we're going to try it out and see. I decided to come to our little coffee hang with some comfies on because why not? And I've got my coffee. Last week, the ice sounds were everything to me. So here's you some ice sounds. Y'all, I did not expect to have as much fun recording the podcast last week. I kind of in my head was like, yeah, Malls, if you just like do it once a month, like I'm trying to bring more of a real side to my branding and where like social media, you do the short clips or like you have the vlog, like just bringing more of a full circle. So that's why I started doing the sit downs or had planned to start doing the sit downs. And then when I did it last week, I was like, if I do it once a month, that's fine. I literally had the best time, and even sitting in the chair with y'all right now, like this week has been so up and down with like emotions, and like I'm in that part of the month where it's like the week before. So like I have had to battle way more emotional feelings and like discouragement and not as much inspiration, which is what we're going to talk about this week, than I had last week. So if you know me, I am an introvert, but I also like, if I have something to talk about, like I will gab to you for a long time about it, especially best friend wise. Like I just love chatting with my best friends, but I had kind of there for a little while early in my 20s, just kind of accepted about myself that I might just not have a lot of words to say. And let me tell y'all something. That is not, that's not true. That is not my truth. That is not who I was made to be. So I'm going to stop owning that. I'm going to move the mic closer. If any of you know my husband, you know that he's an extrovert and he has a lot to say. And it's one of the things I fell in love with about him. I don't know. He has a lot of words to say, but last night or maybe it was 2 nights ago, I had just gabbed on for, I know it had been at least 5 minutes. And he was like, babe, you had a lot to say. And I was like, I know, like I'm kind of proud of myself. I had a lot to say. So all that to say, I'm having a lot of fun filming this podcast, and thank you so much if you listened or watched last week. I currently have audio only on Spotify, and then I have audio and visual on YouTube. So come hang out. I want to talk about what I kind of experienced this week and something that I have kind of been discovering on my own. So this is kind of a thought child I'm bringing into the world. And I realized as I was making the outline for this week that it might actually have to be a 2-parter, because I think when we talk about what we're going to talk about today, I need to kind of set it up, and then we need to kind of think about it in different terms, because we all don't do the same thing. We all don't relate the same way. Like there's so many. So as I was making the outline, I was like, Malls, this is a very kind of broad topic, but I think it's been helpful to me, and I've only shared it with my sister and it was helpful to her. So I hope that it helps you just maybe think about things differently in your life, or take it how you want. Okay, let me start with last week. Last week was like a golden week. I had set a schedule. I had set when I was going to create, when I was going to go to the gym, when I was going to post, and all that. And I hit every single one of them, felt awesome. Then I got into this week and I was like, okay, I know that it's that week before my period, but I also feel a different kind of thing happening. And then I was also on the phone with my sister, and she was sharing some of her experience in her life. And I shared with her this idea of, I wonder if in this creating, when we take from it and when we give to it, does it affect us differently? And this week, when I was feeling a little bit more, some of the words, I feel like I'm in therapy. What are the words you're feeling? Like discouraged or not as inspired. Like, I was really thankful to other creators because I was inspired. Like, I got on Pinterest and I all of a sudden got inspired. I was like, oh my gosh, that like makes me start thinking about a certain kind of photo shoot I would like to do, or that makes me think of a content idea that makes me laugh. Then I was watching someone on YouTube and I was like, oh my gosh, like their just energy was so refreshing and like really encouraged me to then create. And that's where this concept comes in of, okay, so clearly, like last week, when I give, when I put out, when I create, that's a great thing. It also empties that cup a little bit, right? Like you've got to refill, Southern feel and fill are really hard. You've got to refill that cup somehow. And that's where this concept is kind of a doozy because it's like, okay, wait, we've kind of been taught in culture that taking is bad. And it's like this week when I was feeling not as inspired and I quote unquote took or consumed from my peers, it actually re-energized me. So what is that? What is that kind of cycle that this is creating? And it's made me just think about the energy that brings to us and to our lives. And like I said in the beginning, I think I have to paint this picture first in a creative way. Whether you're a creative or not, I still think that this will mean something to you because I believe everyone is creative. Okay. We all have hobbies. We all have things that we like to do. And when I say like create, like I even mean like thinking of a new kind of workout and then you do it, or like you just do something that triggers that part of your brain. So that's the part of creating. Okay, taking another sip. So let's just start with talking about those two words, giving and taking. And I know we could probably come up with some higher level words, but that's what we've got. So when we talk about creating, we are inherently giving when we create, and it does take some of our energy. It takes, maybe we've been really vulnerable when we've been creating and we give it to the world or we even when we just create and we don't even give it, like that's still giving a piece of ourselves. And then on the other side, you've got taking, where it's watching a video, listening to music, absorbing things. This is not inherently bad. Like when we create, we also want people to absorb. Like we make it for ourselves and we also make it for others, I believe. So it's a cycle that I feel like can turn bad or can not serve us well. And I think that's why my brain started trying to put these two things together, because this concept just made so much sense to, you hear the words burnout, you hear the words discouraged, uninspired, like you hear that, and then you also hear like they're on fire, they're so creative, they are making trend. Like you have these extremes in our culture of creating, and both of those things could be different outcomes from this cycle that I'm talking about. And so how I started experiencing it was, it started before I even started making content for my brand. I have always loved Instagram. I've always loved YouTube. I love photos and I love taking them. I love editing them. I love just making it a certain mood or vibe. It goes back to the episode like last week, like romanticizing. Like, it made me romanticize these different eras. Like, you know, sometimes we love doing photo shoots that are like the 50s, and it makes us feel like we're back in that era and all of that. So this thought started back when I was like, okay, I did a lot of just taking and consuming for a long time. And it's now time where I feel like I'm called to start giving or creating in this space. And before I even walked into this space creating, I mean, how many times a week do you hear people talk about social media and how toxic it is or how bad it is for you and all this? And I'm like, okay, I'm starting to think that that's a buzzword for people, and I want to talk about this. And I like, let's actually figure out what's wrong with it, because we live in 2025 and social media is here to stay. And I don't believe turning off your phone and never interacting with it is going to get anyone far. So it's like, okay, wait, how can we actually get into that space and give in that space, create in that space, and add to the conversation? This has kind of been in my mind the whole time that I've started adding more into the creative space online of, okay, taking toxicity out of it, taking burnout, like all the extreme words, like take them out. And let me just think about this in a sense of, what is my intention here when I'm creating content or when I'm just creating, period? Even if I'm just like writing music, like what's my intention? And it helped me to think, and I still have to ask myself that. I mean, week to week, day to day, it could be different. My motivation to this point is that I want to bring a different conversation to the table. I want to bring inspiration and enlightenment of the way we look at ourselves and view others. Like, I want to bring that conversation to the table. So that's what I started thinking about when I was thinking about creating and giving. And it's like, okay, so I also have to fill that cup back up. And how do I do that? And that's where this conversation moves into outside of the creative world, because I think how we also rest or absorb or take fills that cup back up. And a lot of that for me is outside of the social media space. So if I'm giving in those ways that I explained, how am I also resting or taking or absorbing in that space as well? And this is what I've actually found to be really helpful. And like I said, I'm going to stay inside the creating zone, and next week we'll go outside. I started commenting on people's posts. I started liking people's posts. I started making sure that the creators that I consume their content, I like it. And if I don't want to leave a comment, that's fine. But I at least give some love on what they've given me. So as I've taken it by me commenting or liking, or maybe even, dare I say, just have a positive thought like, oh, that was so inspiring. Like saying that out loud, whether you share that with them or not, I think you've given back to yourself and to just the energy in this world. And that that's part of why I wanted to have this conversation, because dare I say that the outcome from this and this way of thinking is that the world might feel just a little bit better. Just a little bit. And as I was like thinking about that, I was like, okay, this is like a low-key plug for people to like and subscribe to my things. But I promise you that's not the point. For years, I've been watching YouTube for a decade, would not like people's videos or comment. I didn't know to. And I talked to Evan about it the other day because he's a big YouTube person too. And he was like, I don't even think about it. And that's the thing, is you don't think about it. And there's literally no fault of your own. You don't think about it. But it's one of those things where it's like, we're also being the culprit in this world of taking and giving, where we're just absorbing it and we're not giving anything back. And that's the fun part, is like, you don't have to be creative to give anything back. You just giving positive energy or positive comments or a positive like back to something that you have absorbed. I'm trying to use absorbed instead of taking because it just feels a little bit more positive. That, I think, changes the way that we interact with social media and just online things. We got to take another sip. I wouldn't be talking about this if this wasn't something that was challenging me. I don't do it perfectly. But there's this certain YouTuber that has gotten a lot of hate for a long time. And she just perseveres. And I'm so proud of her. Because I think sometimes hate is just a fun bandwagon for people to hop on. And that if those people were actually like by themselves, they probably don't actually feel that way. Dare I say. Hey, this is Coffee Hang. We get real. Anyways, back to that YouTuber. She had posted on her story, and it was a clip of her YouTube video she had just posted. And the first thing that came to my mind, and I've been a silent watcher of hers. Like, I will always like her videos, but I won't always comment because her comment section is so like extreme. And I just don't care to be a part of conversations when they're like that. And I just like slid in her private DMs and I was just like, your energy is so inspiring. Like, thank you for sharing that. And I tell that with y'all now, like exposing myself that I said that in a private conversation. But I say that to say, like, I used to only absorb from her, and I wasn't helping that conversation that was happening with her channel. And this is just one example. It's the internet. So like there's extreme comment sections all over the internet. You can go find them. But I say that to say, like, I finally flipped the switch and was like, you know what? I want to give back. And she has given so much energy for so long, and I've only ever absorbed it, and I've never given anything back. And I want to change that. And so that was the T90est way of doing that. And whether she sees it or not, like, who knows? But I put that energy, and this is where it gets a little woo-woo, but I put that energy out into the world. I also just like gave that energy to myself. Like, I chose a positive outlook for myself. And I don't mean like you have to always choose it, but it's like that had nothing to do with me, but everything to do with her and trying to give her an encouraging word. And that's me giving back. So that's the most tiniest example. But that was one way I caught myself trying to change that script yesterday. So what does this mean when we're on the other side? Like my energy last week, I was giving to myself. I felt like I was putting out a lot. So it's like, okay, if I'm having a week like that, like at the end of that week, my cup is most likely going to be empty. So within the creation space, like, because what if that happens midweek and I've got to still meet deadlines or still get something out there? I've got to keep going. And it's like, how do we pause and rest in that space while still moving forward and while we're giving? And this is where the conversation goes really personal, because I think it's whatever you need in that moment. And pausing and resting is so good. 2 weeks ago, I had put out a lot of content, and I remember it got to Thursday, and I just took the day. Like, I just took the day to breathe. I had scheduled something to go out that day. Like, you would have never known that I wasn't posting, but I just took the day and got off social media. So that for me is a part that I'm still trying to figure out. And this is still such a I'm so curious to hear your thoughts on this and ways that if you're in the creative space, or if you're already moving on to applying this in your personal life and whatever you do, what this looks like for you. And I'm so curious. And also, like, what's inspiring you? I love knowing, like, everyone is so different, and I just love knowing what inspires people. I think let's go ahead and take this into part 2, where we talk about it with real life, like outside of the social world, because I think that when we are giving in ways like we are exercising, we are having a conversation. That's a big one we're going to come back to. When we are writing music, when I'm just using mine and Evan's lives as examples because that's what I know. When we are meeting with clients, like very normal life things. I want you to think about what you do normal day to day, and even like make a list of giving and taking, or whatever words you feel like means more to your brain. I made a whole list for me, and I want to continue to make one as I like sit and think about it. But there's something really cool that happens. Like, for example, when we have conversations with people, for example, when I have a conversation like with my sister, I called her earlier this week because I was absolutely drained. And I was like, I think I need to just like connect with someone close to me. The energy I felt coming off that phone call, I was re-energized. And within that phone call, there was so much give and take between both of us, because this is the complexity of a conversation. You're listening, which is giving to them, but also taking from your energy. Like, the cool thing is when it comes to connection with people, it goes both ways. And it's like, oh, no wonder why connection is so vital for us. This makes sense. So yeah, that's just one example of outside of the social media world, giving and taking, and getting off the phone with my sister and being like, oh my gosh, I'm re-energized. And half of that phone call was not about happy things, but it was that I had connected with someone. And another thing I thought of was like, for Evan and I, after our work day, something that's so important to us is getting to connect after. And yes, like through conversation, but we love to watch some TV together. And the act of that is like, yes, like we talked about earlier, we are absorbing. We're also resting in that, but we're kind of like giving to each other in that. And so it's something that relationship-wise and relationally, it's going to be different person to person. But I think it's worth sitting down for 5 minutes and making a list, because this is going to help you when you're in those weeks that feel either extremely one way or extremely another. And then you have like a crash, or you wake up just not feeling good. It's like, okay, I can check in with myself. Like, have I just been like taking and not really like giving anything back to my work or to myself or to others? And you can check in with yourself. Here's my list. I will share it with you. This was so quick. There's some deeper ones here for sure, but these are kind of more like on the surface. So giving for me is like creating, commenting, hearting, celebrating others, connecting with others, making dinner, making music, working out, and taking or absorbing for me is listening, watching, connection with others. I put that on absorption as well because that's both sides for me in my personality. Even like eating dinner, whoever like has made it and then you eat it. Listening to music, again, that absorption and that taking is not necessarily bad. A point I want to make sure that I make is I think we can overdo each side. And that's what I mean by having this check-in list is we can overdo absorption and taking to where it leads to low self-esteem, uninspired, just dullness. Like when we've just all we've done is consumed. And so then we have to swing the pendulum the other way. And we have to give and create and just start making things or connecting with others, which is giving. And it's that way of checking in with yourself to help that pendulum swing back and forth. I hope that this has made sense. I feel in my body that I could sit here and talk about this for another hour. But I'm like, oh gosh, when I listen back, I hope that this makes sense because I am not a psychologist. I'm just me. And I do think about things very deeply. But this one feels really helpful, not only to myself, but hopefully to you. And I just refuse to gatekeep anything that could be helpful for anyone to live a better life. So yeah, with that, let's take another sip. Here are my takeaways for this week for us. Some bestie takeaways. If you are feeling drained, maybe don't start with blaming yourself or shaming yourself. Maybe you've just been stuck in giving and it's time for swinging that pendulum and resting and giving yourself a break and maybe consuming a little bit, which is like so countercultural to say. But after this episode, I hope that it makes you think about that word differently. If you've been stuck in the taking phase, maybe it's time to create and to give something to yourself, to others, however that feels right in you. I dare you to have confidence to do it and boldness. And sometimes you still need the boldness even when you're not going to share it with the world. I know that. Here are a few questions I'm going to take into my weekend and I want to offer to you as well. What's one thing that you can make today that's just for you? Like start with just for you and see what that energy shift does. And just to give an example to help round this out is for me, like making a really yummy breakfast or a really yummy coffee. Like that's just for me. Like I'm eating that. Evan's not going to eat it is just for me. And how can I do that and feel inspired in that and maybe like play in that? And then another one is how could you give to yourself or to someone else in a way that feels joyful and exciting? And then something I want to reflect on personally is where have I been taking in without noticing? And that's going to take some real self-awareness for all of us. But we can do that. We can do that because here in this space, we are self-aware people and we take a moment to figure these things out and we're not perfect. So that was so fun. Thank you so much for listening and hanging out. Please feel free to DM me your thoughts or comment on Spotify or YouTube your thoughts. I cannot wait to hear them. And if you're like, Malls, please let's dive in deeper. Let's take this to the outside world. I would love to do that. And we can talk about it more. That has just been so much fun. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time. Bye, guys.